So just when I thought I was going to be able to take a night off and focus on myself, this drops. The Colombians have now decided that they are on board with the idea of invading their neighbor Venezuela, along with the folks in Uruguay. Colombia's government has ended its opposition to possible U.S. military intervention in Venezuela, breaking with regional allies who demand a political solution to the neighbor's crisis. Colombia is part of the Lima Group, which consists of 14 countries from the Americas that fiercely reject both Venezuela's authoritarian President Nicolas Maduro and a possible military intervention by the United States to remove him. Which pretty much sums it up. They, of course, have interests in the region that don't line up with Mr. Maduro's, but the one thing that they all agree on is it's none of our business, meaning the United States. And given that there's only one country down there that has any financial dealings with the United States at any real level, meaning Colombia, you can see why. It's going to be very soon a time for deciding. I clearly remember, and I'm not going to make this about politics, but the current leader made very clear, if he was elected, that this interventionist nonsense would end. We've got 1 dead in Yemen, we have 2 events in Syria, we've got people dead in Africa, and now we have this, and that's less than 2 years. I would like an explanation from those of you who support the man about whether you were mistaken or whether he lied. Now, this is how things shake out. If you want to look at it on a map of what would happen if a shooting war started. There's no way the Mexicans would ever back us, along with the Hondurans, the Nicaraguans, and the El Salvadorians. Guatemala and Belize would likely be irrelevant in any type of a action like this, so I left them without any designation. Costa Rica, Panama, Jamaica, Haiti, and the Dominican would do whatever China would tell them to do. Venezuela, Bolivia, and Chile for sure. Ecuador, I'm 95% sure. Peru, I'm 80% sure, and I can make argument for both of those, given the status of Martin Vizcarra, the new president of Peru, and Ecuador also being a founding member of OPEC along with Venezuela, would never in any way, shape, or form support the United States in an invasion of Venezuela. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are questioning Brazil because of the current election. It's set for 7 October. And the reason I have them in green is I firmly believe that Haddad is going to run away with this election. There's a lot of information out there right now where they're saying his opponent, the guy who got stabbed, Jair Bolsonaro, is in the lead. That is only because the guy who would have won going away is in prison. His name is Lula da Silva. He is Workers' Party, Dilma Rousseff, the guy who was president, who was put in jail, his vice president, is now Tamer, is about the most unpopular guy in the world right now, 4% approval. Once all of the different disparate factions of the left in Brazil get on the same sheet of music and get behind Haddad, it'll be a bloodbath. It'll be 70-30, 65-35. Recently, because of the stabbing, of course, Jair Bolsonaro has gotten a little bit of a bump in the polls, but we are, 16 September, we've got 14, but we got 3 weeks. So a lot can happen in that time, and I'm wondering if this change of heart by the Colombians is because they know that they need to make this happen while Tamer is president, because Tamer supports the U.S. and Colombia. Because if it's a flip, and it's looking like it's going to be, there's no way Haddad and Davila are going to let this fly. Now, the reason I say that, and I'm going to back this up with some facts, is this. Now, this is the LA Times. They are leftist. Of course, everybody knows this, right? So you'd think they would be giving you an article that would say the left's going to win. Well, they're saying the exact opposite here. But what they're not saying is in the article, they're just looking at it the wrong way. Right now, the guy who's in the lead is, of course, Bolsonaro, and he is polling at about 26%. Lula da Silva, the guy in prison, was polling at 39%. And there's like 5 or 6 people running, so you have to understand the numbers are split. Haddad's at 13%, and that's right here. And Bolsonaro's at 26%. But what they don't tell you down here, or they tell you way down in the article, are these other people running who are all leftists. Alckmin, Silva, Gomez. Once these people drop out of the race, these votes are all going to go to the left. So 22, 8, and 12. Well, the 12 here is other candidates. There's a whole bunch of different people on the list. But basically the numbers are 22, about 30% of these are going to go back. And so that'll give them a 43 to 26 edge. And after that, it's just going to be over. Because when Rousseff went to prison, he was way more to the left than Tamara is, his vice president. He had an 87% approval rating in Brazil, which down here was just unheard of. So Brazil is very much to the South American left, not our left, their left. So without the endorsement of Da Silva only coming out in a matter of days ago. Sorry about the blur. The polls haven't reflected this yet. And of course, there's this. This is the vice president of, or the soon-to-be vice president, and it's South America. And we know how South American men vote. They'll vote just to be able to see this on the news every morning. So it's just kind of the way it is. Now, I want to talk to you guys honestly about something. Let's go back to here real quick. This is Barack Obama. Executive Order 13692, blocking property, suspending entry of certain persons, contributing to the situation in Venezuela. This was the original executive order that established Venezuela as an extraordinary threat to the, let's see if I get this right here, constitutes an unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security and foreign policy of the United States. And I hereby declare a national emergency to deal with that threat. I hereby order blah, 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 all of these different things. This was 8 March 2015. Now, let's contrast it here. Nicolas Maduro was literally no different in the way that he approached governance than his predecessor, Hugo Chavez. Why wasn't Hugo Chavez an extraordinary threat to the United States in 2000, 2001? Took power in a coup. Tried to, and then got put in prison and then released. And then they tried to overthrow him, and he got put back in power. And during this entire time, no one ever thought that Hugo Chavez represented some kind of an imminent threat to the United States or its national security. Through all of these years, historic low inflation, historically high revenues in Venezuela. Why is it only after Chavez died, Maduro took power, the U.S. dropped its ban on exporting oil for profit, that all of a sudden everything goes haywire? Why is it all of a sudden only over here after almost a decade and a half of quote-unquote evil socialism did the U.S. decide that that represents some kind of a threat? And the reason I brought up this executive order because this executive order here just continued it. And this was 24 August 2017. This isn't even the biggest part of this executive order. This is 13 February 2017. This is first 100 days of the administration. In fact, if I have this down right, let's see, 213. Yeah, this would be first 30 days. Treasury, Mnuchin, launches this sanction on the vice president of Venezuela and this guy named Samar Bayo. Samar Bayo was a member of Mar-a-Lago, if that gives you any indication. And you can look that up. This guy, Goldman Sachs CandyMan from Hollywood, leftist with wife 20 years younger than him, literally the same day, and you can look this up too, the same day he got confirmed. 13 February, the first thing he did was announce these sanctions on Venezuelan officials. And you can look this up for yourself if you don't believe me. It was first 30 days for this administration. And order of business number 1 for Steve Mnuchin. If you think I'm kidding, look it up. This is the guy. I don't want to make this about politics. This is one of the things that I have a hard time staying away from, but there's too much that ties with the two stories to not cover it. This was way, way, way up on the radar of the current administration as soon as they took power, and they have continued a policy, an executive order. Remember the whole promise to repeal all the unconstitutional executive orders? Apparently not this one. In fact, not only did they not repeal it, they decided we're going to enhance it, and they've done it yet again this year as well. So, just saying, for those of you who continue to be on your knees in front of the altar in Washington, there's other things going on that might lead to real war in our hemisphere. And they're very much pushing for it, and they have been pushing for it for a long time. If anyone remembers August of 2017, we were, of course, talking about the issue with the Fitzgerald and McCain, but what was going on here was much, much worse. They were trying as hard as they could to overthrow that government. There were riots. They had sent people in from Colombia to pull the currency out, to cause all sorts of mayhem and problems. They failed then. They tried to kill him a month or two ago. They failed then. And now, all of a sudden, somebody has turned the screws on Colombia. And now they are on board for a U.S. invasion of Venezuela. And I'm telling you, this is how it plays out. And you can't see it on the map. I'll scroll up there real quick, but there were 3 states that decided to change their mind. It was unanimous against the United States, even Colombia. But Canada, Colombia, and the president of the Organization of American States is actually an Uruguayan. Now, Argentina, the reason I have them in gray and on the side of the invaders is they're in such a financial pickle right now. They're going to have no choice but to dollarize and do whatever the U.S. tells them to do. I know their vote right now is against, but, and I don't know that it's relevant about Paraguay. But Bolivia, I can make the case for. Brazil, Peru, Ecuador, Venezuela, Honduras, Nicaragua, Cuba, and Mexico would be what we're staring at. And then all of these others in red would definitely not be on our side in something like this. And even out of Colombia, there are plenty of people in Colombia right now that wouldn't be on board for that. So they'd be fighting an internal struggle as well, on top of Venezuela having the backing and blessing of the Russians and the Chinese. And Maduro just got back from China, where he just signed a bunch of deals. So don't think they're going to be involved in this for any other reason but to make sure that they get paid back. And while we're trying to throw sanctions on them, and in this fool's errand trade war with China, now we have this consideration to think about. I really don't have a clue what's going through the head of the administration right now, trying to push this issue with Venezuela. There's no street riots in Venezuela right now. They're recovering. Things are getting better. People are coming back to Venezuela from Ecuador, from Peru, from Brazil. It's not great, but they're standing up a completely different system that is completely divorced from the U.S. dollar. I don't know how the U.S. can make any kind of an allegation right now that Venezuela is a threat. They don't even, our currency there is illegal. How are they a threat? So mark my words, if this goes down the way it's looking like it's going to go down, folks, I hate to say it, but we ain't going to be on the right side of history on this one. So, just wanted to speak my mind. You guys have a great night. Like, share, subscribe.